I arrived on the planet Violia as a cultural exchange volunteer, young and curious, with no idea that a single invitation would change the fate of two worlds. Violia was famous for its bioluminescent cities, glowing towers grown rather than built, and skis that shimmered like living glass. The people were elegant and distant, their customs polite but guarded, especially toward humans like me. That night there was a public gathering in the Grand Concourse, a celebration of the twin moons filled with music that vibrated through the air like a heartbeat. I stood awkwardly near the edge, watching alien couples move in slow, graceful patterns, their shadows dancing in strange colors beneath the lights. That was when I saw her. She stood alone near a crystalline pillar, tall and poised, with skin pale as moonstone and eyes like deep crimson stars. Her silver hair flowed down her back, catching the light in a way that made it seem almost alive. She wore dark ceremonial robes, marked with ancient symbols I did not recognize. Everyone else seemed to give her space, as if an invisible boundary surrounded her. I did not know why, but something pulled me toward her. Before fear or reason could stop me, I approached and bowed slightly, copying a gesture I had seen earlier. In halting but respectful violin, I asked if she would like to dance. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The music softened, conversations faded, and nearby aliens turned their eyes toward us. She studied me closely, her gaze sharp yet curious. Then slowly, she smiled, revealing the faintest glimpse of elongated fangs, which I foolishly assumed was simply an alien trait. She accepted my hand, her touch cold but gentle. As we stepped onto the dance floor, whispers rippled through the crowd like a warning wind. I felt a strange mix of excitement and unease, unaware that I had just invited the vampire queen of Violia into a human dance. The moment we began to move, I sensed that her presence was different from anyone I had ever known. She glided rather than walked, getting me effortlessly through the unfamiliar steps. Her strength was subtle but undeniable, like steel wrapped in silk. The music responded to her movements, growing deeper and more intense, as if recognizing its true mistress. Around us, the crowd had fallen silent. Some lowered their heads in reverence, others stepped back in fear. I noticed several armored guards watching closely from the shadows, their eyes never leaving her. Still unaware, I smiled and tried to keep pace, feeling oddly honored by her attention. As we danced, she leaned closer and spoke softly, her voice smooth and ancient. She asked why a human would invite a stranger to dance without knowing who she was. I replied honestly, saying that she looked lonely and that music was meant to be shared. For a brief instant, something like genuine surprise crossed her face. She told me her name was Seralith, a name that carried weight and history. The air around us seemed to thicken when she said it. I asked if she attended many celebrations like this, trying to sound casual. She laughed quietly, a sound both beautiful and unsettling, and said that such events were usually held in her honor, not attended freely. It was then that I noticed a faint red glow beneath her eyes, pulsing gently with the rhythm of the music. She spoke of long nights, endless rains, and a thirst that shaped empires. I thought it was poetic metaphor, the way royalty often spoke in stories. I did not yet understand that she was speaking quite literally. When the dance ended, she did not release my hand. Instead, she asked if I feared monsters. I answered that I believed monsters were often just misunderstood souls. Her smile widened, and the crowd drew a sharp collective breath. The celebration ended abruptly, the music cutting off as if silenced by command. Guards surrounded us, kneeling before Seralith with absolute devotion. Only then did realization begin to dawn on me, heavy and chilling. This was no ordinary noble, no ceremonial figure. She raised a hand, and the guards froze in place, awaiting her will. Turning to me, she apologized for the deception, though she claimed it was one of omission rather than intent. She revealed her true title, Queen of the Nocturne Court, Sovereign of Blood and Shadow. The Vampire Queen of Violia, ruler for over 1,000 cycles. My heart pounded, memories of human legends flooding my mind. Predators of the night, drinkers of blood, immortal tyrants. I tried to step back, but my legs refused to move. Fear warred with the memory of her gentle guidance on the dance floor. She explained that vampires on Violia were not mindless beasts, but an ancient species bound by strict laws. They fed through ritual, ruled through balance, and protected the planet from far darker threats. Humans, she said, were rare here, and almost never approached her without terror or ambition. My simple invitation had amused her, then intrigued her. She asked why I was not screaming or begging for mercy. I answered that she had not harmed me, and that fear alone was a poor judge of character. For the first time, her regal composure cracked, revealing something vulnerable beneath. Loneliness, centuries deep, reflected in crimson eyes. That night, instead of imprisoning or dismissing me, she invited me to her palace. Not as a subject, but as a guest. The crowd watched in stunned silence as I walked beside their queen. Unaware that my fate, and perhaps the future of both our species, was being rewritten with every step. The palace of the Nocturne Court was carved into a living mountain, its halls illuminated by veins of glowing crystal. I felt small within its vast chambers, surrounded by beings who had lived longer than human history. Yet Serelith treated me with unexpected kindness, assigning attendants who ensured my comfort. Whispers followed me wherever I went, calling me the human who danced with death. Over time, Serelith and I spoke often. She shared stories of ancient wars, lost lovers, and the burden of immortality. I spoke of Earth, of fleeting lives, fragile beauty, and the strange comfort found in impermanence. She listened with fascination, as if my mortality was something precious. Tensions soon surfaced. Other vampire nobles questioned her interest in me, fearing weakness or manipulation. Some called for my removal, others for my execution. Serelith defended me fiercely, her authority unquestioned, but her patience tested. One night, an assassination attempt was made against me. I survived only because Serelith intervened, her wrath swift and terrifying. In that moment, I saw the full power of the Vampire Queen, shadows bending to her will, enemies reduced to ash. Yet when she turned to me, her expression was filled with fear, not rage. She confessed that she cared for me, a dangerous truth for an immortal ruler. Such attachments had ended in tragedy before. I admitted that despite everything, I felt the same. A bond forged not in blood, but in understanding. The council demanded resolution. Either I would leave Violia forever, or face transformation into something no longer human. Serelith refused to decide without my consent, breaking tradition for my sake. I was given time to choose, knowing either path carried loss. I chose neither exile nor forced immortality. Instead, I proposed something unheard of, an alliance between human and vampire built on trust rather than fear. A symbol, I said, stronger than treaties or laws. Another dance, held openly before both species. The night it happened, the grand concourse filled once more. Humans and Violians stood side by side, watching as Serelith and I stepped into the light. This time, everyone knew who she was and who I was not. Yet the music played, and we danced. The dance marked the beginning of a new era. Trade, cultural exchange, and shared protection followed. I remained mortal, agging slowly under advanced care, while Serelith ruled on. Our love existed not in eternity, but in moments. When my time eventually came, centuries later, she held my hand as the music faded. And it is said that even now, the Vampire Queen sometimes walks alone beneath the twin moons. waiting for the day when another human might ask her to dance, and change the universe with a single, innocent question. Centuries passed more gently than anyone had expected, not because time slowed, but because meaning filled every moment we chose to notice. I aged slowly by Violian standards, yet unmistakably by human ones, while Serelith remained unchanged, a constant beneath shifting stars. The people of Violia grew accustomed to seeing a mortal at their queen's side, first with confusion, then curiosity, and finally with quiet respect. Children born long after that first dance learned the story as legend. They spoke of the human who asked without fear and the queen who answered without hunger. Statues were raised in the grand concourse, not of conquest or war, but of two figures mid-dance, hands joined, eyes level. Serelith ruled wisely, but love changed her rule in subtle ways. She listened more, punished less, and questioned traditions that had once seemed eternal. The nocturne court evolved, not abandoning blood rites, but tempering them with consent and compassion. It unsettled the oldest nobles, those who believed immortality meant stagnation. As for me, I became an anomaly. A mortal advisor in an immortal court, consulted not for power, but for perspective. I reminded them what endings meant, how urgency sharpened kindness, how knowing a moment would never return made it sacred. Yet beneath the peace, shadows stirred. Not all threats to Violia came from within its borders. Beyond the outer systems, something ancient had awakened, something even older than the vampire dynasties. A hunger not for blood, but for silence. The first signs were subtle. Stars dimming without explanation, communications failing, entire outposts going quiet. Serelith felt it before anyone else, a disturbance in the night itself. She began to dream again, something she had not done in centuries. In those dreams, she bled. Not metaphorically, but truly, crimson flowing from wounds that refused to heal. She woke shaken, hands trembling, immortality suddenly fragile in her mind. For the first time since her turning, she feared death. I noticed the change in her long before she spoke of it. The way she lingered, longer in sunlight, filtered through crystal glass. The way she watched me sleep, as if memorizing something she might lose. When I asked, she did not evade. She told me of the Void Choir, an ancient force that consumed civilizations not through war, but erasure. Species vanished not as corpses, but as forgotten names. Even immortals, she said, could be unmade by it. The council convened in panic. Old rivalries resurfaced, alliances strained, fear sharpened ancient prejudices. Some blamed humans, others blamed Serelith herself. They whispered that loving a mortal had weakened their queen. For the first time, I was not merely an observer of politics. I was the center of them. And for the first time since I had arrived on Violia, I considered leaving. Not because I was told to, but because staying might doom them all. Serelith refused the idea immediately. She said immortality had taught her patience, not cowardice. If the Void Choir was coming, she would face it as she always had. With her people and with me. Preparations began across the planet. Ancient defenses reactivated, forgotten weapons unearthed, rituals older than language prepared. Violia became a world holding its breath. And in that stillness, Serelith and I found ourselves closer than ever. One night, beneath the twin moons, she asked me a question she had never dared before. If the Void Choir consumed her, if her immortality failed, would I regret loving her? I answered without hesitation, saying regret belonged to things left undone, not things deeply lived. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in centuries, she wept. The first encounter came without warning. A rift opened beyond the outer moon, space folding like wounded flesh. From it emerged shapes that defied form, shadows that swallowed light and memory alike. The Void Choir had arrived. Vialia's defenses held at first. Energy flares lit the sky, ancient wards sang with power. Seralith stood at the forefront, her presence rallying vampires and mortals alike. I watched her become legend incarnate, night bending to her will. But the choir did not attack the body. It attacked remembrance. Soldiers forgot why they fought, commanders forgot their orders, entire histories unraveled mid-battle. Panic spread faster than any weapon. I felt it too. Memories slipping like sand, faces blurring, moments losing their edges. Only one thing remained clear: Seralith. I held onto her name like a lifeline. Realizing the threat, she made a decision that shattered the council. To anchor herself to something mortal, something finite, something the choir could not erase without consequence. She chose me, not as shield, but as truth. Through an ancient rite never meant for love, she bound part of her essence to my fleeting life. Not turning me, not draining me, but sharing vulnerability. For the first time, the vampire queen could be wounded by loss. And for the first time, the Void Choir hesitated. The battle turned. Not through force, but through meaning. Every memory tied to emotion burned brighter, resistant to erasure. Vialia remembered itself because it remembered love. The choir retreated, not destroyed but diminished. Driven back into the dark between stars, where meaning was scarce. Victory came at a cost. Seralith collapsed in my arms, bleeding as in her dreams. She survived, but changed. No longer entirely immortal. No longer entirely bound to eternity. Her reign continued, but now with limits. A queen who could die, and therefore truly live. The people mourned and celebrated at once. They called it the night mortality began. Statues were altered, inscriptions rewritten. History adjusted to include fragility. As years passed, my body weakened. Even advanced care could not halt time forever. Seralith remained by my side, attending councils less, watching sunsets more. The queen learned how precious endings were. When my final days came, they were not quiet. The entire planet dimmed its lights in respect. Music filled the grand concourse once more, the same melody from our first dance. Seralith asked me to dance again. We moved slowly, carefully. No audience this time, only memory. I told her she had taught me eternity did not need to be endless. She told me I had taught her that love was worth bleeding for. When I passed, she did not scream. She held me, steady and present. Immortal tears falling onto mortal skin. The universe did not end, but it changed forever. And somewhere beyond the stars, the Void Choir remembered fear. For it had learned that as long as even one being remembered love, oblivion would never truly win.